Quit Like a Millionaire is a book by Kristy Shen and Bryce Leung that shows how the author, Kristy, went from complete poverty all the way to becoming financially independent at the age of 31 without making it big in business or realizing crazy market gains. It presents a repeatable set of actions and tips that will help you reach your financial independence faster and guide you over many bumps in the road along. In this video, we will go over the key ideas and takeaways from Quit Like a Millionaire. But before we do, feel free to leave a like on the video, as every like, share and comment help the channel out tremendously and I really appreciate it. If you are new here, feel free to subscribe with the notifications turned on for more personal finance, investing, business and motivation related videos, as well as weekly book summaries. Takeaway number 1. Don't fear scarcity mindset. Scarcity mindset isn't always a bad thing, it can also be constructive. When any resource, especially money, is scarce to you, you won't waste it. This is how scarcity mindset can teach you to make the most out of the little amount that you already have of whatever you're lacking. And on top of that, scarcity mindset makes the thing you lack a priority. It makes you ignore other less important things so you can better use your other resources such as time and energy in the pursuit of what you lack. This also makes you appreciate whatever you lack way more and gives you a higher chance to actually obtain it. Poverty and the scarcity mindset that the author was forced to adapt because of it taught her 4 very important skills that she still uses every day and likes to call them by the acronym CRAP. Creativity, resilience, adaptivity and perseverance. It also let her see the invisible waste that all the other people around her throw away as a treasure and make the most of it. Takeaway number 2. Picking the right career. Following your passion may be a very bad way to pick a career. Many people simply pick a career that they like at a time or think they like without taking the cost of education and increase in compensation into account much. This in turn makes them overpay for education and often leaves them unhappy with their career choices once they realize how much student debt they have. To reach financial independence faster, try picking a career based on its pay over tuition (POT) score. You can calculate it using this formula. Obviously, the higher the POT score, the more value each dollar you invest in your education actually has. In other words, as far as money is concerned, it makes more sense to pursue that career. If you want to become financially independent, a high POT score career is a great way to vastly speed up your journey. Takeaway number 3. The debt trap. Without that, in order to buy anything, you would have to work for the money and have the exact amount of money needed to buy the item on you, or you simply couldn't buy it. That changes all of that, as it allows anyone with credit to buy anything and pay for it later. This of course comes at a cost of interest, and that cost is sometimes pretty steep, but most people, especially young people, ignore that fact and buy things that they don't really need using debt. That's how debt disconnects money and time, makes the compound interest work against us, and makes our present selves punish our future selves for short-term pleasure. Hence, it's very important for anyone who aims to become financially independent to get rid of all bad debt as soon as possible. If the interest rate of any debt you carry is higher than 4%, get rid of it even before you start investing. Now here's a couple of tips that you can use to accelerate this process. Cut all the unnecessary expenses as much as possible. Increase your income by getting a side gig if needed. Sort all your loans highest to lowest interest rate, pay off the highest one first, and move on to the next one while paying the minimum on all the rest. Also refinance your loans if possible. Takeaway number 4. Happiness is relative. Whenever there's a positive event in our lives or we simply buy something, that makes us happy because we perceive that positive change. While on the other hand, whenever something negative happens to us, we feel bad over that negative change. Over the long run, however, we always get used to the changes, as they become a new normal and we return to our baseline level of happiness. This is widely known as the hedonic treadmill. Dopamine, also known as the quote-unquote pleasure chemical, is the main driver of our happiness. Whenever something good happens, it gets released and we feel happy because of it. The nucleus accumbens is the part of our brain that receives dopamine, and it can easily get overloaded, thus getting used to high amounts of dopamine and making many experiences feel not so exciting anymore, as too much dopamine simply becomes the new normal. Now, many experiences that we expect to be exciting, because they were exciting a long time ago when we first experienced them, never reach that expected amount of thrill again. but that often doesn't stop us from repeating them in hopes of feeling that thrill again. So each time you buy a new item, it feels good in the moment, but that quickly fades away and you quickly get used to it. A new norm is also adapted and the next purchase feels a bit less good compared to the previous one, keeping you happy for an even shorter period of time. Well, you can still form compulsive buying habits as you keep chasing the next thrill with every new purchase, often without even realizing that each new purchase gives you less happiness than the previous one. On top of that, you bought an item, and that item is there, staring at you, potentially causing regret, and you might even fear that somebody will steal it if you don't keep an eye on it, and it might even come with some maintenance costs related to it. Now, when it comes to experiences, people who spend money on them instead tend to get way more bang for their buck. Why? Well, since every experience is different, you get to feel the equivalent of the initial thrill when buying an item for each experience. On top of that, experiences themselves don't leave behind items that you regret buying afterwards. Takeaway number 5. Should you own a home? A typical middle-class family keeps most of their net worth in a primary residence, and that quote-unquote investment never actually accumulates much money. The home value itself might go up, but the underlying costs of ownership are mostly ignored, and those end up eating most of the returns made by the property appreciation. Now, if you own rental properties, a house can be a great investment, but it's a terrible investment as a primary residence. The added costs of maintenance and repairs, taxes, insurance, and the fees that go along with all of that make it so. And the worst thing is that all of those tend to get ignored when an average person calculates whether it would be worth it to buy versus rent. Simply having a mortgage payment that costs the same as your current monthly rent doesn't mean that it makes sense to buy and pay yourself rather than paying the landlord, because this ignores all the costs of owning a home. To find out how much this would actually cost and thus find out whether it's worth it to buy instead of renting, simply multiply your monthly mortgage payment by 1.5. The result is how much your house will roughly actually cost per month once all expenses are factored in. Naturally, if the result is higher than your rent, then it makes sense to keep renting. If it's lower, then it makes sense to buy. So the point of this takeaway is not to make you never buy a house. It's to make a calculated decision and act upon it instead. Takeaway number 6. How to manage your investments. Investing is actually not complicated, and index investing makes it even simpler by allowing you to invest in a bunch of companies at once and capture the market return instead of trying to pick out the winners. Additional benefits of indexes are that they can't crash to zero, they have low fees, and beat 80% of all actively managed mutual funds after fees. To design and maintain a portfolio, all you need to do is pick an equity allocation that you're comfortable with. More stocks will mean more potential returns but higher volatility. More bonds means less returns but less volatility. The authors, for example, went with 60% stocks and 40% bonds, which is pretty conservative. Next, choose which indexes to track and pick the funds that track them. To maintain your portfolio, all you need to do is rebalance to the target allocation as your investments fluctuate in value, and you can do this by selling the overweight asset class and buying the underweight class with the proceeds, until you meet the target allocation again. To optimize taxes, put any assets that pay interest or non-qualified dividends in your tax-deferred or tax-sheltered accounts and put the assets that pay qualified dividends in a normal investment account. After you retire early, you can avoid penalties of accessing the money in your 401k by building a 5-year F.I.R.E. conversion ladder using these steps. Consolidate all your 401k accounts into a traditional IRA. After that, perform a F.I.R.E. conversion equal to your standard deduction. Repeat this every year, and after 5 years, you'll have a penalty-free access to the first converted amount. Also, don't forget to realize all the capital gains you gain every year inside the 0% tax bracket by selling some ETF units. Takeaway number 7. How to buy your time back. Once you become financially free, adopting the freedom mindset is the next natural step, as money stops being the most important thing and is replaced with freedom. Once all your expenses are covered, there's no need for hoarding. You can instead start working on buying your time back. You can now do whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want it, as your survival doesn't depend on labor and you have enough money to keep harvesting your nest egg forever without depleting the principal thanks to the 4% rule. The 4% rule refers to a study that aims to find out how big a portion of a portfolio you can withdraw each year inflation adjusted without running out of money during a 30-year period. With 4% withdrawals, a 75-25% stock bond portfolio has a 95% success rate, meaning that the chances of you running out of money are very slim. The market will basically have to crash horribly the next day after you retire and recover very slowly for you to run out of money. To find out how big a nest egg you would need to retire using this rule, simply take your annual spending and multiply it by 25, and that's the amount you need. Okay, but how does one amass the amount of money needed to retire using the 4% rule? Well, your time to retirement depends on how much you save way more than it does on how much you make. How much you make only dictates the highest possible savings rate you can have, while the savings rate itself determines when you'll be able to retire. If you start with $0 and continuously save 60 to 70%, you'll still be able to retire in around 10 years' time. Takeaway number 8. What about the sequence of return risk? Well, while 95% chance of success is fine for most people to cope with, that's not the case for all of us. You can use many techniques to guarantee success, and the one the authors use consists of cash cushion and the yield shield. The cash cushion represents a pile of cash sitting in a high-interest savings account and can be used as a cushion so you don't have to rely on selling a part of your nest egg to pay for living expenses during a market downturn. Every ETF has a dividend yield that is a form of liquid cash flow for you, and you need to take it into account when calculating how big a cash cushion you need. And that can be calculated using this formula. For example, if your portfolio's dividend yield is 2.5%, your annual spending is $40,000 and your portfolio size is $1 million, then your cash cushion needs to be $40,000 minus $1 million times 2.5% times 5, so $75,000. A 5-year-long recession though is pretty much the worst case scenario, so you could also go with a lower number of years if you want. Now, if you feel like the market is very likely to crash in the near future, you can raise the yield shield by temporarily moving your portfolio into higher yielding assets, but note that this is just temporarily. A preferred shares ETF, REIT ETF, investment grade corporate bonds, and blue chip dividend stocks are good options to temporarily invest your portfolio in for this purpose. On top of this, geographic arbitrage is another very valid option, as you can cut your costs drastically by temporarily living abroad in countries with lower cost of living than your home country. If you want to stay home without changing your lifestyle, a side hustle or return to work part-time are also viable options. To summarize, don't fear scarcity mindset. Scarcity mindset isn't always a bad thing. It can also be constructive. It can teach you to make the most out of the little amount that you already have of whatever you're lacking and appreciate it way more. Picking the right career. To reach financial independence faster, try picking a career based on its pay over tuition (POT) score. POT score is median salary above minimum wage divided by total cost of the degree. The higher the POT score, the better. The debt trap. Debt lets us buy things that we don't need with money that we don't have. It's very important for anyone who aims to become financially independent to get rid of all the bad debt as soon as possible. If the interest rate of any debt you carry is higher than 4%, get rid of it even before you start investing. Happiness is relative. Our happiness level always reverts to a baseline level, as we accept new levels of happiness as a new norm. That's why compulsive buying can't keep you happy for long. Should you own a home? To find out how much it would actually cost you and thus find out whether it's worth it to buy instead of renting, simply multiply your monthly mortgage payment by 1.5. The result is how much your house will roughly actually cost per month once all expenses are factored in. How to manage your investments. To design and maintain a portfolio, all you need to do is pick an equity allocation, choose which indexes to track, and pick the funds that track them. Keep rebalancing the portfolio to your target allocation as your investments fluctuate in value. Make use of the 5-year Roth IRA conversion ladder and tax-free capital gains limit to optimize taxes. How to buy your time back. Once all your expenses are covered, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want it, as your survival doesn't depend on labor and you have enough money to keep harvesting your nest egg forever without depleting the principal thanks to the 4% rule. What about the sequence of return risk? There are many techniques that you can use to guarantee success. Your cash cushion and the yield shield should be sufficient. You can even raise the shield if needed. Geographic arbitrage, a side hustle, or even return to work part-time are also viable options. Thank you for watching, and I really hope this video was useful to you. As a final note, let me just clarify that this is a summary of a book. It's not investment advice. You must always do your own due diligence before investing, as it's your money and you and only you are responsible for the consequences of your own actions. With that out of the way, thank you all for sharing the videos with friends and of course destroying the like button. There's much more investing, personal finance, business and motivation related content on the way, as well as weekly book summaries, so feel free to subscribe if you have not done so yet. I'll see you next week, so enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye!